Okay, I've started my next model airplane project. It'll be flight test style design, and what you're looking at there, I don't know if I'm back far enough. Let me back up here. That's the wing. I'm making it one piece. It'll be a 100-inch span with a 15-inch chord. So you can see in the middle here, we've got the leading edge cut away, and we've got the fold or the curve lines cut and it opened up a little bit. Next I'll be making the spar. The spar will be this 6-foot piece of aluminum square section, and to fit it into the wing, get the thickness right so the wing thickness is correct, I'm going to put it inside of a foam board box spar. So I've already built the first section. This fits in here perfectly, and I'll put a piece of foam cap on top of that, and I'll make 2 more of those. That'll be a little bit longer than the aluminum spar, but that's okay. It'll help support the outer wing panels. Okay, so my first attempt to put the aluminum spar, this baby right here, into the box spar, the foam board box spar I'm making to surround it, was a failure. It's not too surprising. What happened was the aluminum spar really sucks the heat quickly out of the hot glue. So as soon as it came in contact with the glue that I put on the sides in here, it just the glue just started to harden really quickly, so I wasn't able to push it all the way down and seat it in there. So basically I've ruined one of these. I'll have to make another one, and I won't be gluing it in. That shouldn't be a problem. This is mainly a spacer and a holder to keep it in place inside the wing. The aluminum spar that goes inside of it isn't going to move around. There's a couple of screws that go through it in the center there where those holes are that will hold everything in place. So it's not a problem. Just was hoping to be able to glue it, and not going to. Here's the wing with the spar installed on the lower surface. Next steps will be to fold the top surface over and glue it down. Okay, the spar is all glued in now. I made a hinge right here so I could fold this back, and I've made a cut along the trailing edge of the bottom surface so that when I do the final assembly on this, it all lays in there nice and even, comes to a crisp point. Next step is going to be to cut in the ailerons. Ailerons are going to go from about 2 inches in from the tips to about here, and they're going to be 4 inches wide. Okay, the next step in our giant 25% Scale Citabria project is cutting out the fuselage. I've drawn a profile of the fuselage on 2 sheets of foam board that have been glued together. It's going to give me approximately a 60-inch long fuselage. The rudder and elevator will stick out past that dimension another 5.5 inches. So overall about 65-inch fuselage length. The solid lines you see here are score lines, and you might, I don't know if you can see them on the camera or not, but I've got some dots outside that. Those are 1/2 inch beyond the score lines. Those are, I'm going to be cutting through there and then removing the foam between the score line and then that paper that's left over will be folded over to strengthen the edge of the fuselage, and I will show that as soon as I've got one side done. Okay, one side's done. There it is. This is going to be the outside, and on the inside you can see where I've folded over the extra paper, that extra 1/2 inch of paper, to wrap all the way around and seal up the edges and hopefully give me a pretty durable surface. You can see here where I had a bit of a curve.
Doesn't fold over quite as neat, but it'll be alright, I think. If you look close, again, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I was still working on my technique. I started here, and it's not perfect. See that it's like it's lifting a little bit right there. By the time I got here, and even on this one's not perfect, by the time I got here though, I'd really figured out how to do it, and now they come out pretty nicely. If I get the glue exactly right, there isn't even any extra glue. Don't always get that. Doesn't matter too much, it's on the inside, but it does lay down real nice, and I'm pretty happy with how that turns out. So one more side to go. You can see I've got it drawn up, and then it'll be time to start final assembly. Okay, we've cut two bulkheads exactly the same dimension and placed them at the front of the wing saddle and at the back of the wing saddle to create the width of the fuselage. The next step is going to be to cut in this piece of the top of the fuselage here, and the taper I want to shape the tail of the plane. And then after that, I'm going to put a battery shelf in here at about this level, and it's going to be tapered as well to bring the nose in slightly. Haven't decided exactly how much I want to do that yet. Just whatever looks good, really. I decided to do the tail surfaces next, and I'm going to start with the rudder. So I've cut out two pieces for the rudder. I'm going to sandwich them together like this to double the thickness since it's such a big model. My question at this point is what glue to use to glue these two pieces together. I don't think hot glue is a good option. I don't think I can get it spread evenly enough, quickly enough, thin enough to get a good result. So I'm thinking perhaps epoxy, but I haven't decided yet. When I get it done, I'll show you the result and let you know what I did. Okay, so I ended up using this rubber cement to glue the two plies together. I don't know if it's the best thing to use or not. I used it because it was flexible and I thought it would give me more working time than the 5-minute epoxy I had, certainly more than the hot glue. However, it didn't give me as much working time as I thought, but it seems to have worked okay. So I did this two different ways. When I did the vertical stabilizer, I cut the two pieces to shape first and then glued them together. That didn't work out perfectly, so I've got some trimming to do there to get those lined up. So when I did the horizontal stabilizer, all I did was try to line up the trailing edge, and even that's not as good as I'd like it to be, so that's going to have to be trimmed, and then the rest of it, of course, I'll cut to shape, and hopefully that will be perfect when I'm done. So that's next on the agenda, is trim these up and then glue them together, and probably set those aside and go back to work on the fuselage. Okay, we've got the battery tray cut and glued in place. We also got the back of top of the fuselage cut and glued in place. So the fuselage has pretty well got its shape now. One of the nice things about this thing is look at all the space I'll have in here for a battery, and I can adjust where it goes. I've made sure there's room here for 2 of these batteries if necessary in order to balance, and that would give me, I don't know, 15 minutes of flight time at least. Anyway, the next thing I'm going to do is install the firewall here. Get back to you after that's done. Okay, firewall's in. I built in a little bit of a right thrust, maybe you can see it from here, and a little bit of down thrust. You can see the vertical line right there. So that's how much down thrust I put in. It's not a lot, and it's a big guess. Who knows if it's the right amount. Okay, today I've added the wing hold down, which is a piece of plywood, into the fuselage, and it's reinforced by plywood glued above it and to the sides of the insides of the fuselage. And then to add spacers so that the hold downs coming off the wing fit in here snugly, I added these are paint sticks actually, which is a great material for these models because it's very lightweight, and it doesn't hurt that Lowe's will just give you a handful of them for free. To make this perhaps make more sense, I don't know if I've shown this in a video yet or not, but these are the wing hold down anchors. They're screwed into an aluminum spar, and so they'll hook over. Set that down. This hooks over that piece of plywood I just showed you, and then what I just did was I glued another paint stick cut to length as a reinforcement on the top and trailing edge of the wing, and then drilled holes in to match these plastic bolts, which fit in there nice and snug. And then I'm going to put in more plywood into the fuselage. Back over here. They'll be in here somewhere, held in place by a piece of plywood going side to side, and those plastic bolts will screw into them and keep the wing in place. Obviously this will be carrying most of the load. These will just be keeping the wing held in place. Okay, wing hold downs are all done. Put in a piece of plywood here, supported by a couple of pieces of plywood on either side. Drill holes in the appropriate locations and glued plastic nuts in place. I think I already showed you this, but put this reinforcement piece on the top of the wing, drilled the holes, and plastic nuts, or bolts, sorry, go through there and hold the wing. Okay, I wanted to do a preliminary CG check, so I've installed the motor, put the batteries up about where they're going to go, and the speed controller. I also installed the tail surfaces. Then I put the wing on and I did my CG check, and I found that I wanted to I was going to want to put the servos for the tail surfaces as far forward as I could. I'm going to be able to get it to balance just fine, but if I put the servos back here to create short push rods, I might have had a problem. So I created a servo tray here, and as you can see, I'm using relatively light gauge music wire. It's actually 3/32 if I'm not mistaken, and I'm using them in a pull-pull configuration. So you can see the elevator control rods here, one going to the top, and then there's a control horn on the bottom, so they'll be doing a pull-pull, and same thing with the rudder, one on each side. So next thing I'm going to do is create the hatch for this. I think I'm going to make this a fixed piece and put a hatch here for accessing the battery, and then put all the bottom surfaces in place. I might make a hatch down there too, haven't decided yet, and it'll be ready for paint. Okay, I built the windshield and glued it in place and added this hatch to access the battery and the speed controller. Okay,
I've built the landing gear out of 3/16 music wire. I used a vise to make all of these bends, and I'm gonna make a slot in the bottom of the fuselage that this will just slide up into, so I can remove it in case it gets bent. It makes it easier to straighten it back out again, or if I'm not happy with this, I can make a new one and replace it. Okay, I can't really remember where I last left off, so I apologize if I repeat something. I've installed the landing gear. You can see how I've done it. This makes it removable. It actually just lifts right up out of here. A little hard to do with one hand, but you get the idea. It just lifts up, slides down in there. Right now I'm working on the bottom of the fuselage cover. It'll be done in 3 pieces, one from here to there. That's what I'm working on right now. I've taken the paper off of places in the bottom where I want it to bend a little bit. The second piece will go from the back of the landing gear to here, and I actually am going to hinge it around here somewhere and then put something here to hold it closed. That way I can lift the bottom open if I ever want to get through the bottom to work on something. And then there'll be a fixed piece from here to there. What else have I done? I don't think I showed you the tail wheel. This will be free castering. I've tried to make it so it's kind of self-centering. I don't know if you can see it or not. The glue is kind of a mess, but what I did was I put a brass washer at an angle, and I trimmed the plastic housing here at an angle so that it has to kind of go uphill to come away from center. I don't really feel like it's working very well, so if that doesn't work, it'll be real easy to convert that to a steerable tail wheel. I'll just have to put a control horn out from this center bar here, and then run some more control rods from the rudder servo up through the bottom and onto there. What else have I done? I did the hatch on the top of the fuselage for the battery compartment. I'll show you that when I turn the plane back over. Okay, the fuselage is done, and to make sure it didn't get damaged before I got a chance to fly it, I made a place to store it up in the rafters there. Not rafters, but floor joists. As you can see, I've got all of the bottom of the fuselage done, which was all that remained at the end of my last taping. Next, I'm going to finish the wing. Shouldn't be a big project. I've just got to finish cutting out the ailerons, install the servos. I'll have to solder up some servo leads. They'll be quite long, obviously, from about here to there, so 3 feet or so each. Okay, I've finished cutting one of the ailerons in, just to go over how I went through this. Before I folded the wing up and put it together, I actually put a score line in here where the hinge line is going to be. That would be on the bottom edge of the top surface of the wing. And then just now I made the cut throughs for the ends, both ends, and through the lower edge. Then I beveled this surface so that it would hinge, and I also beveled this under surface here so that the aileron can pass like that. And of course I hot glued the hinge line, as I always do. Added a few blocks here to stiffen up this surface. I put in just one block there. I don't know if I need more in there or not. Well, we'll see. Anyway, one more to go down here, and I'm ready to install servos. Okay, I've finished cutting out both ailerons. They're all done. I've glued in some control horns. I've soldered up some extensions for a couple of standard size servos and fed them through. And all that remains is to solder up
a plug on this thing. I've got 2 of those done. 1 more to go. And we'll be ready to test the servos before gluing them in place. Okay, the quarter scale Citabria-like RC airplane is ready to fly. I haven't settled on a paint scheme yet, so its maiden flight will be without paint. Weather for tomorrow looks good, so hopefully that'll be the day. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, roll it.
That good?
Yeah, that's enough.
All right, well, you just saw the takeoff and the first few minutes of the maiden flight. It looked like it was going pretty well, huh? And it was. It was flying very well. It was very stable in pitch and roll. Power was good. I was a little concerned about the not having enough power. The motor would only turn an 11-inch prop, and the motor, or this model, probably should have more like a 13 to 15-inch prop. But it was flying well. The only problem I had was I ran out of pitch up trim. So I had used up all of that, and it still wouldn't fly level even at full power. It would lose altitude. But it wasn't a power problem. I could hold it at level flight by holding a little back pressure. So at that point, the smart thing to do would have been to bring it in, land it, and figure out what's going on with there. I'm sure it was just a matter of moving the CG back a little bit, and then it would have been perfect. But I thought it was flying well enough that I could put it through a few maneuvers and you know, wring it out a little bit more and see how it does. So I climbed up. I got a little altitude and put it into a loop. Turns out I didn't have enough altitude because of what I assume was a nose heavy situation. I didn't have enough pitch authority to pull it out of the loop soon enough, and crashed it right into the ground, almost completely destroying it. There's really about the only thing that I can save from the plane is the tail. Everything else was destroyed. The radio, the servos, the motor, batteries, those are all fine, but the airframe is pretty much destroyed.